Again, I don't know about you, but there are hardly any communities that I would less like the Islamists to be recruiting in than felons and the military. Interestingly enough, he is now actually in the federal prison system because Muammar Gaddafi gave him $500,000 to kill the then Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. And he's doing hard time. As far as I can tell, at least some of his chaplains are still ministering to the military and the prisons as we speak. He hedged his bets after, towards the end of the Clinton Gore administration, and joined forces with this guy. You may have heard of him, Grover Norquist. Better known for his anti-tax activism, but as a way of trying to make sure that in case Mr. Gore lost, he would retain his influence and his access to the highest levels of the United States government. He created with Grover Norquist this Islamic Free Market Institute. I mention this not just because it's ancient history, but because I want you to understand this is part of the problem that we're facing right now, as I'll show you. Al-Amoudi was one of those that, thanks to Grover Norquist, was able to get close to then candidate Bush. This is in May 2000 down in the governor's mansion. And he's one of, just for illustrative purposes, 6 that I've profiled in the course, by the way, if you're interested in doing a deeper dive on this at MuslimBrotherhoodAmerica.com, free online course. Each of these is worth a comment, but let me just save that for Q&A. My concern is, this is the next target. And potentially the damage that was done during the Bush years, which I believe set the predicate for the damage that's being done during the Obama years, could well be visited upon us in the Romney administration. I want to be clear, I much prefer a Romney administration, even so. But I just learned Friday that Sama Norquist, Grover's Palestinian-American wife, was just made one of the national co-chairs of the Arab Americans for Romney campaign. And that's not good, for reasons that I'd be happy to talk about. This is moving right along because I'm running late. Part 10 of the course that I've just mentioned, MuslimBrotherhoodAmerica.com, is all about ways in which people like you can help. As individuals, as members of organizations, groups of various kinds. Perhaps you want to start one of your own, by all means, but get smart, learn from others' experience, collaborate where you can. And at a minimum, we need to do things as citizens of this country. And my colleague Chris Holton is going to take you for a deeper drill down on some of the specific things that you can do in this Commonwealth right now. But before he does that, I want to leave you with one last thought. It's my favorite quote from a guy I had the privilege, as you heard, of serving. He talked about this when I was still at Vickers back in 1961. Freedom is never more than one generation from extinction. We don't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. It must be fought for, it must be protected, and it must be handed off to them to do the same. Or we will spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children what it was like to live in the United States when men were free. I'm reasonably sure you're here because we don't intend to do that sunset year ago. We're here to help you leave to your children and your children's children the kind of America we all love, the kind that we inherited from our parents who fought the previous generation's threat to our freedoms, as we must fight this one. Chris?
a lot more to that presentation that I know we'd all probably rather listen to. But unfortunately, you're going to have to listen to me now. Frank referred to the report and the course online, MuslimBrotherhoodInAmerica.com. I urge you to take the time to view that, because it really does cover everything that Frank would have covered tonight in 10 parts, online for free for anybody that wants to see it. It's a very valuable and important website that you need to go to and educate yourself about. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to talk about different state-level initiatives that we have created with some allies over the last several years. About 2008, around November, we came to the conclusion that Washington, D.C. was about to become occupied territory, and that it was going to be difficult to push back against Sharia and Jihad on the federal level for at least a while. Hopefully that will change, but it shifted the focus of a lot of the work of organizations like the Center for Security Policy to the state level. And we have worked on about a half dozen different types of legislative initiatives on the state level that are either geared towards pushing back against Sharia and Jihad, or are suitable for that purpose because of the nature of their language. Before I get to those 6 pieces, I should call your attention to everybody understands that Sharia is a threat in this room, I'm sure. I want to caution you about trying to find the silver bullet, the one piece that will slay the Sharia dragon and make it go away. A few years ago, they tried that in Oklahoma, and it didn't work out very well at all. In fact, not only did it fail in the courts, but it was counterproductive for our movement. What they did in Oklahoma was they passed a constitutional amendment, which passed overwhelmingly, as expected, by 70 to 75%. They passed a constitutional amendment which essentially said no Sharia in Oklahoma, which is a great, laudable goal. The problem is in the details. Number one, by singling out Sharia, my legal advisors tell me it violated the Equal Protection Clause and possibly the Establishment Clause of the U.S. Constitution. And in fact, later when it went before federal court, that's exactly what ended up happening. It's been struck down. But from a pragmatic standpoint, there's something equally troubling about that approach. Let's say that we pass a law here in Virginia, saying no Sharia in Virginia, and we ride off into the sunset and congratulate ourselves for all the great work we've done. And a couple years down the road, a divorce case happens in Virginia, and the 2 parties to the divorce case are both Muslim. And one of the attorneys for one of the parties accuses the other party of invoking Sharia in some way. Of course, the attorney for that party will deny it, because Sharia is illegal in Virginia because we passed a law, right? Well, here's the problem. Chances are the judge didn't go to Al-Azhar, didn't go to Sharia school. He's not going to know. How's he going to know? Where is he going to go to find out whether or not one of the attorneys is invoking some aspect of Sharia law in that divorce? Well, the only place he can go is to a Sharia scholar. So the ironic part behind that is that the very law that was designed to prevent the infiltration of Sharia into our legal system would have invited Sharia in a way. And we've seen Frank talk about the doctrine of taqiyya under Sharia, when it's not just permissible to lie, but it's required to lie to advance the religion. So the approach in Oklahoma that got so much publicity is not the approach to use. So I wanted to get that out of the way before we talked about other methods that can be used on the state level to push back against Sharia and Jihad. And the flagship piece of legislation on that score is called American Laws for American Courts. It's passed into law in Tennessee, Louisiana, Arizona, and Kansas. We hope to pass it into law in many other states in the upcoming series of legislative sessions that will begin after the first of the year. American Laws for American Courts was crafted by constitutional law experts as well as experts in Sharia law, which means it is a unique formula for preventing the infiltration of Sharia into our court system without violating our Constitution. American Laws for American Courts essentially says that no court in this state shall enforce a foreign law or foreign legal doctrine if the application of that foreign law or foreign legal doctrine would result in the violation of anybody's constitutional rights. That approach is very different from the Oklahoma approach. Number one, it doesn't mention Sharia by name. It's important that it talks about foreign law and foreign legal doctrines as well. And that's because the main guise under which Sharia manifests itself in cases in U.S. courts is not actually under the name Sharia or even Islamic law. It usually appears as Pakistani law, or Egyptian law, or Saudi law, or Iranian law. You get the pattern here? Usually, it appears as some form of foreign law. So when we say foreign law or foreign legal doctrine, we cover laws from countries like Pakistan and Egypt and what have you. And when we talk about foreign legal doctrine, we cover other forms of law that may not be associated with actual nation states, i.e. Sharia. The thing about Sharia that makes it different from other forms of religious law is that unlike Jewish law, which is meant to apply to Jews, and Catholic canon law and other forms of Christian canon law, which are meant to apply to people of those faiths, Sharia is the only form of religious law that is meant to apply to everybody. Not just Muslims, but to everybody. In fact, if you do a statistical study of Sharia law textbooks, a majority of the text in books like Reliance of the Traveler, which is the most widely read Sharia law textbook, the majority of the text actually deals with non-Muslims. So statistically speaking, the majority of Sharia applies to you and me, not to Muslims. That is really why it constitutes such a threat. And that's the purpose behind American Laws for American Courts. It protects individual constitutional rights against foreign law and foreign legal doctrines that would violate individual constitutional rights. And that's where we get Sharia. Because inherently, Sharia violates so many fundamental constitutional rights. Right from the get-go, equal protection, because under Sharia law, the testimony of a woman is worth exactly half that of a man. I can cite a case in Maryland, not too far from here, from 1996, in which a woman lost her child in a divorce case when her husband tracked her down from Pakistan using private detectives and showed up in a court in the People's Republic of Maryland with a court order from a family law court in Pakistan, which is essentially nothing but a Sharia law court, awarding him custody of their child. Believe it or not,